Hi friends from around the world. We will continue today with the domain names and the trademark dilemma. As you have seen in the last video, if not, please have a look into it. I explained the concepts of the domain names and how it is worked, and today we want to look at two cases in order to give a bit of flesh on how this is being conceived and what would be the dispute resolution which has been made through panels on the WIPO, the UDRP. So just to recall, you can go through negotiation if you want to acquire some domain name with the domain name holder, or you can go to court, why not, or you can go to the dispute resolution which has been made available through ECAN accredited registrars and is being instituted by the WIPO UDRP. Now, in order to get the domain name transferred to you as a complainant, you need the three things, right? You need to demonstrate that the trademark is identical or confusingly similar to the domain name, that the respondent, so the domain name holder, has no legitimate interest in that domain name, and that it has registered that domain name in bad faith. So the three conditions. So everything goes quite straightforward. The decisions of the panel are public. So the case, you can look them up, the two cases in the judgments, and the rulings, and the rulings are straightforward, so you can read it and understand it clearly, not like the European Court of Justice judgments. So let's go straight into it. The first domain name is McCoy. This is the case here on the screen. This is McCoy is so the domain name holder McCoy in 2001 it was registered, and it was in the name of a vault, so a kind of a troll to sell it afterwards to the highest bidder. The complainant was a Dutch insurance company, or a Dutch company with regard to this kind of insurance policies and so on, and they said they had a trademark since 2019. I recall the domain name was registered in 2019, but they had also the name used, McCoy name used internationally since earlier dates. Now they tried to contact this troll, and this troll never responded, and never responded either during the proceedings in the UDRP. So it went to the panel, and the panel that looks at these three limbs, three branches of what need to be demonstrated in evidence in order to be able to transfer the domain name to the complainant. So first thing, is it similar or identical? Well, they said it is identical as it is, so that is normally not the big problem here. The TLD, the top level domain name, is not really something which the panel looks at, right? Second is the legitimate interest. And more often than not, so not when is being transferred as an end result of the decision. If it is being transferred, they look at all the three limbs. But if not, the second limb is often disregarded in favor of the third limb, which then will be probably rejected from the complainant's perspective. So in that case, the complainant argued that the defendant, they never responded during the proceedings, and that is a clear interest that they have, or a clear evidence that they have no interest, legitimate interest in the domain name. Well, it was set aside by the panel in favor of the third limb, which is in bad faith. And with regard to the bad faith, well, the complainant argued in the same sense that, it never responded, it has not a business in whatever has to do with McCoy, and it is clear that they only wanted to get a high money out of it. That was their business model, and so it should be taken as a admission. So the non-respondent, so they did not respond to anything, not during the proceedings. It should be regarded as admission. Now the panel, they looked at first at the difference in time between the registration of the domain name 2001 and the trademark name of the complainant in 2019. So it was already very difficult from the panel to see that there is an riding of the coattail, a kind of profit taking from the famous trademark or so. So that is the first thing here. What second is that McCoy, well, it's a very current name, so why would you put McCoy into something if you don't know if there is a famous name or will be a famous name in the future with McCoy? It could be any other name. So 1 out of 100 million names, why would you take that in order to... So it was more or less the reasoning of the panel by saying, it is not being transferred, so we have not sufficient evidence that this is being done in bad faith against a certain, actor in the market game. So the comment here would be first that it is always risky to make a complaint when the domain name has been registered earlier than your trademark registry. So in that case, we have 18 years of difference, which is probably a high risk. The second issue here to look at is that you have not necessary to conclude to admission when the respondent does not respond, does not make any submissions during the proceedings. So this is the first case. The second case is, it might sound more with you, Chagall. Chagall has been registered as Chagall.com by an Israeli individual in 2000. And as you may know, Marc Chagall was a famous painter, French painter, and its canvas are sold at high prices, so it's a famous one, and it has a foundation of the family, of its family, of its descendants, which is a foundation in order to promote the Chagall, the paintings and its work, its art, in the world all over. And it has Chagall trademark since 1986, so before the 2000 when the domain name has been applied for by the Jewish individual. So it went to the UNRDP, and again the three limbs are being examined. First limb, normally it is not a big deal, so normally it is even identical, and in this case it is identical if you disregard the top level domain, which is normally the case. So you have Chagall against Chagall. Although the respondent, well, the respondent here was making its submissions, the respondent said, well, it has been not used during the first 18 years, but in 2019 it has been directed to a website with regard to some activity. So there was being an activity, and that activity has nothing to do with the Chagall, with the famous painter. So that should be taken into account with regard to dissimilarity of, it cannot be confused because it has nothing to do with the famous painter. But this has been discarded by the panel. No, it is about the identity of the name. It is not about the underlying activity, which has nothing to do. So it is not with regard to trademark law. There's the goods and services which have to be taken into account. That is only here about the name. As regard to the second limb, legitimate interest, well, the individual, the Jewish individual, said, well, I'm a Jewish individual, and I'm interested in selling and having, long-term investment and making domain name registrations, and looking at the name which may have a long-term development, a long-term run, in order to monetize on that. And I don't know, said the Jewish individual, I don't know Chagall, so I'm a Jewish individual and I live now in the United States, and I am interested in Chagall as the transliteration of the word concubine. So concubine in Jewish transliterated mean Chagall. So that was my point. So the sexual connotation of concubine is, which gives me, some more monetary potential for the future in order to get, so to say, a payout from my initial investment. Well, again here, the complainant said, well, that cannot be true because everybody knows Chagall, and what he says is just an excuse, etc. So there was still another domain name, also transliterated from Hebrew into Christian language. Latin, and which also had this sexual connotation. But again here, the panel decided, well, we obliterate the second limb for the moment, the legitimate interest. We go to the third limb, what is about the bad faith here. And on the bad faith, well, it said clearly that, the complainant said clearly that is not the first time that they want to monetize on this. It was still here, the Chagall Foundation, they approached the Jewish individual first in order to get the transfer of the domain name. And the Jewish individual, they responded, well, please make an offer. And that was not followed up by the Chagall Foundation. They instead went directly to the panel. So what is about the bad faith? Well, it said, bad faith, so Chagall Foundation is well known, and they wanted, their business model is based on that in order to get the highest price out of something which they will never use, although in that case they have used it in 2019 for, that kind of insurance. And, the fact that they wanted the money, that immediately they said, well, I will transfer it for money, that is clearly a bad faith, and they wanted to get that money out of it because of Marc Chagall. Now, the panel was not so convinced. They said, well, it's a kind of balanced approach here. We don't have much evidence with regard to the bad faith. The fact is that the Jewish individual, it said, well, I wanted to have this for a potential future. So the mere fact that it didn't want to use that domain name, but it registered it for future sell, is not a bad faith, is not considered to be a bad faith. So again, a difference with regard to trademark, where you have to use it. Here in the domain name area, there's no such requirement to have used it, and the possibility to sell it for a higher price in the future is something, which is considered, I wouldn't say normal, but it is not considered as bad faith in the beginning. So the balanced approach, meaning that they say, what the respondent said has a certain sense. So why would a Jewish individual now know about Chagall a lot, and he never approached the Chagall Foundation for resell? It was the other way around, and they didn't found it was so clearly a bad faith case here, so that they could decide to transfer the trade name to the Chagall Foundation. So again here, what are the comments? Well, it could be risky to to ask first what is transfer of the name, and you get an offer, and then you go directly to the panel, rather than follow up and collect some more evidence on what would be the bad faith case here. So it is, I would say, more difficult to gather and present evidence with regard to bad faith more than in normal trademark cases, as the use requirement is not really here. So this is a bit more difficult, and there is, the evidence is what you can present, and there's no witness, etc. So it is a kind of more complicated in order to get to. Now, the fact that I have presented here two cases which did not get through doesn't mean that it is very difficult in order to get the transfer name transferred to the other to the other party, to the, so to say, the legitimate party. But it tells you a bit about a different story. It is not comparable directly with regard to trademark, although it has a trademark aspect, so it is based on a trademark. But what is the dispute resolution has some different triggers with regard to mere trademark disputes. So I hope that gives you a bit flash on what is the dispute resolution with regard to the domain names, and you will have some benefit for your future practice. Thank you.